Welcome back to RGR, folks. This is Ryan going rogue, but with Matt Derrick today. So you haven't seen him in a bit, maybe a touch last week, as well as the live streams from the draft. But I think it's really a great way to do this particular kind of information because it's so quick for us offseason that's so crazy. How are you, Matt?
I am hanging in there, Ryan. How about yourself?
I'm keeping the balls in the air right now. We'll see how long I can keep that up. But a lot of little things I feel like that are going on. And we had some dates pushed back from the league last week. We have a couple of things back and forth. Some of the national media covering Dr. Fauci and et cetera, talking about empty stadiums. I just want to kind of take ground zero where we are right now. Chiefs seem to be on track for getting themselves ready. The league's pretending at this point, but what's your gut feeling about where we stand?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question is just, when maybe we can expect to see players out on a field. And it certainly seems like we're still a ways away from that. I mean, the league on Tuesday is going to move to its next phase, which is that it's going to start letting teams bring people back into the building. It's going to be limited to up to 50% of the employees or 75 max, whichever's the larger number. And it's still going to be dependent on what local cities are doing as far as stay-at-home policies. Now, most teams, it sounds like, would be under the ability to start bringing people in, and the Chiefs would be in that category as well. But it's only really for support people. I mean, you're talking about marketing, you're talking about HR, legal. I mean, any non-football department is really what you're talking about. It's not coaches and it's not players who are going to be allowed in the facilities. So we're still a ways away from that next step, but at least the league starting to get back to at least a sense of normal behind the scenes is a step in the right direction. Now, the other thing that I think we could see before you start seeing teams get back together and on the field together is you're seeing players individually working on their own together. And, Tyreek Hill alluded to a little bit of that last week. I'd asked him if during our Zoom conference call with him, if he'd had a chance to work with any of the other players or do any on-field work. And he even said specifically that he hadn't run a route since the Super Bowl. But some of the players were talking about, coming to Kansas City early and starting to get some on-field work. And that's usually when you would have Mahomes and the quarterbacks, some of the pass catchers, running backs, even tight ends, get together and just throw. And that's been something this team has done the last few years. So that looks like it could be the next step. Now, how much do we know about that? That's usually behind the scenes and underground. So they may not make a big deal out of it, but that would be, to me, the next step for the players before you get to everybody coming back into a facility.
Yeah, it seems to me like they're preparing like this, like you said, behind the scenes. So Alan Wright and his guys in equipment should be there. Rick Burkhalter and his team in athletic training should be there, right?
Yeah, all indications are, and that could be pretty critical because getting the equipment departments back in, equipment managers back in, preparing for training camp, and just being ready to go with whatever option that the league chooses to go with. I mean, right now we don't have a firm commitment, that NFL teams are going to start opening traditional training camps. Now, the Chiefs are preparing as though they're going to, and I know Missouri Western up in St. Joe is the same thing. Everybody's planning on going to St. Joseph for training camp, but we still don't know for sure that will happen, and we don't know for sure that if it does happen, that there will be fans and the public allowed in.
So, two things. I don't see that there's any possibility of an abbreviated OTA before they report for camp. Do you?
I think it's very, very hard. Talking to people, I think it seems still like the most likely outcome is still, going to a regular training camp date, with the caveat that there will probably be a rookie mini camp and a rookie tryout camp maybe together. But a program for one, just getting tryout players like they normally do. It's a rookie mini camp. They do that every May. All your draft picks and unsigned free agents come in. Some guys returning that are like, 1 year guys who haven't played, or maybe practice squad guys. And then you bring in 50 or 60 tryout guys who come in, and so you get 90 guys on the field for 3 days on a weekend. That looks like we might end up getting in July. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I would be very surprised with, one, the way that the pace is going, two, the way that the league and the team seem to be preparing. I'd be very surprised if we see anything in the month of June on the field with these teams. But I could see them starting to bring in rookies and younger players maybe in advance of training camp opening in late July.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning too. My thought is if the league or the team, but specifically the league, decides to push back at all, is there a point in your mind where the abbreviated training camp becomes less of a payoff? They're not getting their bang for the buck if they even go up to St. Joe, if they don't have the full allotment of time.
Yeah, it could be. And, and there's still so many moving parts with it. I mean, a big part of, for the Chiefs going away to camp and where it may be problematic is just that they're still worried about having that many people in close quarters. I mean, typically they just crowd them all into one dorm. Now, they maybe take up more space and spread guys out so they feel a little bit more comfortable. You got to suppose that's got to be something that they're thinking of as the possibilities. Because like I said, I mean, at this point, everyone's proceeding as though they are going to go to St. Joe in late July. But that's also going to be dependent up to the league. And it looks like there's some indications that maybe the league has been looking at some alternatives as far as maybe sending teams to different locations, or maybe, sending multiple teams to one spot, or even just encouraging teams to stay in their own facilities. And then maybe you take advantage of hotels that are nearby that you can put the players up. But I know that there's a lot of concern about just getting everybody together and trying to maybe keep it somewhat normal where players go home at night and are with their families. That's where I think they're just, concerned about moving things too fast and too quickly.
Yeah, the last thing you want is for someone to bring this virus into the facility and end up infecting half of the players' families. I think that's a legitimate concern, and I just wonder if they are going to separate them in dorms and they are going to try to go up there. The only place I'd be comfortable probably is in with the specialists, because there's 3 of them in a whole building. I figure that's pretty safe, right?
There you go.
But beyond that, if they were to just stay at the facility, again, that's back and forth, but it's not as close quarters. It's not as much exposure in terms of time. I know the cafeteria would probably have to, training tables have to change in that kind of situation. But do you think that that's the safest? Do you think if they don't end up going to St. Joe, that's the most likely outcome?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly seems the most likely if they don't go to St. Joe, that they would just simply stay at the facility. Yeah, they've got, basically as far as, the practice goes, I mean, it would be easier for them. I mean, you're not moving all of your gear. You've got multiple fields there at the facility. They got everything that they would really need. Yeah, it's a little close quarters as far as, because, the way that it's even set up for them to have meals in the facility and everything's staggered, so they're not doing things at the same time. Whereas at St. Joe, everybody's on the same schedule. Yeah, everybody eats at once because they've got a big dining hall there that they can take advantage of. That's not the way it is at the facility. So things would have to change a little bit there. But at least they're familiar with it. They can make it work. They know that it can work. Now, I will say this too, as far as being in close quarters, it's a little bit different up in training camp in the sense that they do get to spread out a bit more. And those locker rooms are built for college teams that have a ton of players on them. But the Chiefs locker room at the facility is not built for 90-man rosters. I mean, it's built for, 53 and a 10-guy practice squad. So when they go into, and even this even applies to the stadium as well, when they get into, the training camp, the preseason games, they bring in like extra space and they really cram guys into that locker room. So it's not ideal to bring 90 players into the facility for that, but I think they'd find a way to make it work.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of options. I'll be interested to see how they start to elaborate on what they're thinking as we get closer to those dates coming along. But when we get back from this one, folks, we're going to get some more updates about what we've heard from players themselves and what we can take from it. Now, I personally thought that Tyreek Hill was in a better state of mind. I don't want to bring up the past just to bring up the past, but there have been some legitimate concerns about it. It's a year removed from all the hubbub, legalities, etc. Any take on where the standing is after what we've seen mostly in the media, but also from his appearance?
Yeah, I mean, and even since Tyreek arrived in Kansas City, it's been a bit of an up and down as far as it feels like what his comfort level is with, the media and the exposure. And I did. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think he seemed like a lot more comfortable last week in the conversation. I think it certainly helps that some things are behind him. It looks like that, maybe things are a little bit different in his personal life. We talked about having his family with him. So yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like it's a different tone and a different feeling for him right now. Maybe it's closer to where it was a couple of years ago when it looked like he was really kind of getting more comfortable with the media and talking to reporters all the time. So maybe you're starting to see a little bit more of that, trend back in that direction. But you're right. I mean, last week when we got a chance to talk to him, there was nothing that was brought up that happened a year ago. I mean, it was really back to football for the most part.
I think that's a positive sign, especially when I think the team's in a unique position to take advantage of having everybody back, having even Sammy back. See if I can get these things on straight. Sorry. And he certainly being what is the deep threat? What is, I think, wide receiver one? Everybody can argue about how it all works. But the point is having that group together. And like you talked about in the last segment, being able to try to get some players only practices in, just running routes. Like you said, it's been a couple of months. Is he in a position that you're feeling this year that he's, because of his success, that he's a little bit better positioned to lead in that group?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I don't know is necessarily natural for Tyreek. I mean, I think that if he emerges as a leader on a team, he's going to be a leader by example type of guy. I mean, he's going to be one of those people that you look to on the team as being the one where other people are going to say, you know what, I've got to work harder because I know that Tyreek's working hard. That's the kind of guy that he is. He's not, he's not loud. He's not boisterous. I mean, he's outgoing. He likes to have fun, all those things, but he doesn't really see himself as the type of guy who's just going to, grab the room and give a speech. I mean, he would prefer that be, Patrick. He would defer to Sammy Watkins, to Travis Kelce. I mean, he would defer on those kinds of things to other people. But I think the benefit to definitely having Tyreek around at any time of the season is just simply you're not going to outwork that guy. And that's something that young people and young players need to see is that, here's a guy that's established. He's one of the best in the league. And now you watch him day in and day out and you see why he got that way.
Yeah. And that competition, no matter what time of year it is, pays in dividends, I think. But he's one aspect of it. We also heard over the last couple of weeks, if you missed it on RGR, there was Taco Charlton's conversation with the media. A couple of others have spoken, and one in particular that I wanted to get your read on because I think the linebacker position just feeds into what we want to see happen this season. Anthony Hitchens, I thought, had a fairly positive. I mean, he's a fairly positive guy, so I can't say that that's surprising. But did anything take you aback about just how open he was to communicating with Willie Gay, or what this situation looks like it's becoming?
It didn't really surprise me, but one thing I think was pretty clear is that Anthony Hitchens he's a genial guy. I mean, he's outgoing, he's fun to be around, and he really hit on the head, which is like he's like I'm much more comfortable just talking about life in general. I mean, you go up and you talk to Anthony Hitchens in the locker room, and he's a bit of a different guy than you get at the podium. And that's just the nature. I mean, I think he's much more comfortable, like a lot of people are in that situation. The one thing that I think was probably tough for him going back to, especially I'd say 2018 season, was that he was really looked to by this team as somebody who needed to be the leader out front publicly on that defense. And I don't know if that was really something he was comfortable with. And he got to take a little bit more of that back seat last year when they bring in Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu. And, the club didn't feel the need to put Anthony out there as much as they had done the year before. And I think that was something that makes him a little more comfortable. And, and that was one thing that he alluded to really was that he's a lot more comfortable in that role. And I think now being on a defense where he's expected to be the leader of that linebacker group, and that's it, and not be a leader of the defense and not be the spokesperson for the defense, I think that's a lot more comfortable role for him. And him reaching out to Willie Gay, I mean, that's Anthony Hitchens. I mean, you talk to people about him, and I mean, he's a great teammate. I mean, that's the consistent message that you get with him. He's not selfish. He's not one of these types who's going to look at this as a guy that's coming to take my job. He looks at it as, you know what, when I came to the league, veterans helped me. I'm going to help this guy too. And if for no other reason, then it's also going to help this club get a chance to win.
Yeah, right. Anything that helps winning. And I think that we've seen over the pattern, right, of when Anthony came in, then Frank, then Tyrann. I think the one underlying thing that we don't talk as much about is that not only the free agent acquisitions, but the draft picks as well. Brett Veach and his personnel group are very sensitive to what kind of edge, what kind of attitude a guy has in trying to build up the alpha mentality of this defense. And I wonder, maybe it was a slight misstep. I guess you could argue that Anthony is more of just go to work kind of guy rather than the hoopla, but I think he fits in and it allows both Frank and Tyron to do what they do best.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tough thing for Anthony Hitchens is really, I think he was the right guy for this team, and I think his personality fits in really well. I think the tough part is that, he was coming into a locker room without Justin Houston and without Eric Berry, and was expected to be that guy. And that's not who he is, and that's not a role that he's comfortable in. He's much more comfortable in a different type of leadership role. So that's where I see that, where he may benefit. And I think he certainly benefited in 2019 from having some of those other guys who are more in that style of leader and people who can take a little bit more of a role in the forefront. But I think he still fits in really well with what, this team. And I think that was a big reason why they brought him in, was that they felt like he had the personality that fit with how they wanted to rebuild the culture on that defense, because he's certainly different in that regard than what you had on this team, I would say, in 2015, 2016.
Yeah. And from an X's and O's standpoint, he wears the dot for a reason, to make sure that he gets his linebackers right, but gets everybody else aligned as well. And that's why I really like the pairing there, and the fact that he was so open to reaching out to Willie Gay. Clearly, he understands that Willie Gay's got to play a pretty big part in this defense in 2020. And the fact that I could see them too being the nickel backers in the end, with him having to guide Willie as a rookie. Do you see that could be the way that it goes, or am I missing something?
No, I think you really hit on something there, and I think you also hit on something too. And as far as how the Chiefs are going to use their linebackers and how they're going to deploy them and who's going to make the team, goes a little bit to who is ready to take that leadership and who can handle being that quarterback in the defense. As much as we talk about Tyrann Mathieu, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not his job to be the guy that's getting everybody lined up. It's the linebacker job that they look to. And that's why, the Chiefs really feel, I mean, the two guys that they depend on the most in that regard is Anthony Hitchens and Ben Niemann. Niemann, they feel like, is right there with Anthony Hitchens as being able, the guy that can make sure that everybody's on the right spot and right page, and that they're all, communicating. I mean, that's why, Niemann might be a step below as far as the talent-wise some of the other guys go, but as far as his on-the-field communication abilities, that's where he really excels. So, yeah, I mean, I can certainly see Willie Gay working into this rotation, but I think you're always going to see him, it's in a tandem role. I mean, he's going to be out there with either Anthony Hitchens or Ben Niemann.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see him being the solo linebacker. They're not going to go small nickel with Sorensen in the box with only Willie Gay out there. I
Right.
just can't see that happening. I'm completely with you there, but I think it's intriguing about how the veterans react to the rookies. I always take a lot from how they move forward once they know who's coming to their club. So, folks, we're going to be back with Matt tomorrow. We're going to pick up a different conversation that is really at the core of what this franchise has become. So stay with us for that. And Matt, when we talked yesterday, or what will be yesterday's show, we covered a lot of bases except for the big one. I mean, the guy at the center of it all. Tell me, first off, do you think that I'm overestimating that Patrick Mahomes is the reason that this team was a Super Bowl contender? I mean, take him off this squad, it's not anywhere near the same, right?
No. I mean, we know that. I mean, you take him off this team, and you've got a really good football team. I mean, this team went 12-4 with Alex Smith for a reason, but there's also a reason why they never seem to be able to get over the hump. And Patrick Mahomes is that guy. I mean, he gets you over a lot of humps. He's had some help. I mean, he couldn't do it obviously without a defense and without some guys helping there. But no, I mean, this is the guy that stirs the drink. I mean, No, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, this without Patrick Mahomes as a good team, it's not a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And that really ties into how did he get there? And we could talk about his whole physical progression, but in what we're talking about today, in the evolution of his game, it had to come from Alex Smith. And I like how forward he's been about giving Alex credit along the way. And what we saw happen with Alex, and what we're going to hear from Stephanie Bell here in a couple of minutes, is I think really at the core of not only what Alex is as a quarterback and as a leader, but what he was as an example to Patrick not just Patrick being the arm, the athletic talent, but how to be a complete quarterback so early in his career.
Yeah, and and credit to Alex Smith because clearly from what we've heard and what he has said now a little bit more publicly, and that he's had some distance from it. He wasn't happy when the Chiefs went out and selected Patrick Mahomes. I mean, and even though he said all the right things and did all the right things, there was no reason to believe at the time that he was happy with it. But he handled it extremely well. And he never seemed to hold it against, Patrick Mahomes, that he was the guy that was clearly there, to come in and replace him. And, and Alex talked quite a bit about the fact that, that guys did that for him, when he came in. Yesterday we talked about Anthony Hitchens doing the same thing. When guys came in, they helped him in the league. Now he wants to help Willie Gay. That was the same thing. I mean, Alex Smith, felt like that there were guys in San Francisco that helped ease him in. And he did. I mean, he needed to pay that forward a bit as far as, then helping the guy behind him. But no, I mean, I still contend that Patrick Mahomes is an incredible talent, and I think he would be a great quarterback regardless of whether Alex Smith played in front of him or not. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he did have Alex Smith, I think absolutely accelerated his learning curve and made a lot of other things easier for Andy Reid because there were things that he didn't have to worry about teaching Patrick Mahomes because he got to see it from Alex Smith, see it firsthand about what he needed to do and how he needed to prepare.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And looking back on, like you said, new ways that Alex has opened up about it lately, just taking who he is and what he's persevered, I'm pretty impressed that, again, we didn't think about it as much at the time, but I felt like he played up to the challenge of the rookie coming in behind him. And again, put himself on another level of with weathering the storm that keeps getting thrown at him.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that's probably a little bit of the what if that's got to be going through Alex Smith's head is that how much of this maybe he could have reaped the benefits of. Obviously he certainly benefited from the fact that the Chiefs added Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt while he was there. But I'm sure he has to wonder a little bit that had he got another season with these guys as they progressed, could maybe he have been the guy that got this team over the hump. I still think that's tough. I mean, as good as Alex was, this offense is just clearly different with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they can just do things they could not do before. And that's saying something because this was a really, really good offense with Alex Smith. So, I mean, I there's got to be some of those questions that go through his head that if he'd gotten the chance to play with this team longer, that maybe they could have gotten it done. But at the same time, I mean, I like I said, I mean, I don't think that Patrick Mahomes would be the player that he is had he not played with Alex Smith for a year.
I'm 100% with you. And we've all seen Project 11. I've seen it multiple times because of my background and what I do. And folks, you're going to hear in a minute from Stefania Bell, who we get into the medical weeds a little bit, so be prepared for that. But before we get to her, Matt, I want to know from you just overall impression of Alex, knowing what you know from when he was in Kansas City versus what you saw on that film and where he is today.
Yeah, watching what he went through on that Project 11, I mean, we really didn't get a sense until then just how bad this injury was, how severe of all the things that he had to go through in as far as the recovery. I mean, just how ugly it was. That was the stark realization there of just how much he went through. But the fact that he was able to get through that and to fight through it and to persevere, based on the guy that I know in Kansas City, doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. Because this guy, one was just an absolute physical specimen. I mean, we saw people have seen, I think you could probably go back and look at some of the off-season stuff that he's done, like, lifting rocks underwater and on the beach and, some of these crazy workouts that he did. And he had a lot, I mean, he had some, kind of out there diets that, probably I should be doing as far as staying in shape, but
both of us.
Yeah. You saw this guy in the locker room without his pads on or anything. I mean, and it always just amazed me because I was standing next to him one day and, I mean, there's not an ounce of fat on this guy. And to a degree, you at first glance, you almost say there's no way that this guy can be an NFL player because he's kind of thin and he's, kind of stringy. But then you look at it and like I said, there's not an ounce of fat. I don't think there's any part of his body that wasn't muscular and sculpted. I mean, that's how hard he worked. I mean, just every part of him, arms, abdomen, legs. I mean, he was just one giant muscle, it seemed like at times. But that goes, once again, it goes through how hard he worked. And he also knew that as he got older that he needed to be more physically fit, and he had to do those kinds of things. And I think you're actually, starting to see a little bit of that rub off on Mahomes as well with his off-season workouts, because I don't think there's any doubt Mahomes was talented enough that he's able to persevere and survive, not being maybe in the greatest physical shape, of his life or anything. He's getting there. I mean, you can see an improvement, I think, year by year, that he's starting to get himself in a little bit better physical shape. And you got to think that some of that's, watching Alex and seeing what he did at his age, trying to make sure that he, stayed competitive and relevant.
Yeah, got to keep up with the old man. Folks, he's Matt Derrick. Make sure you check out everything he's doing at Chiefs Digest, where you can get all the information. And you'll hear from Stefani here in a minute. But, Matt, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely, Ryan. Good talking to you.
And, folks, you RGR subscribers, make sure you check that out. I'll have it in video form, but Matt's going to have the story up at Chiefs Digest, and the pod will be coming. So thanks for watching us today. We'll check you next time.